Welcome to the podcast. Súbele volumen. Conversation with the people who were with me. In the world of TV. Carlos tonight. Historias de un reportero. Carlos tonight. Dale que viene lo bueno.
Hey everyone, welcome to Carlos Tonight. Thank you so much for listening wherever you get your podcast, and of course for watching wherever you're watching this from. You know, like many of you, I grew up watching comedy shows, and when I was younger, I would sneak in the comedy special on cable when mom and dad was not looking. And of course, I enjoy a good stand-up comedy night with some friends. And in fact, I'm very excited for you guys to meet my guest this week, Victor Mendoza. Where are you? There you are. How are you?
Hey. First off, that song is a banger.
You like it?
A song with your name in it. Dude, I was like in the little, in the digital green room, like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Cool. I'm glad you love it.
Yeah, dude. That dude, the Latino in me was like, all the blood was boiling. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Loved it.
Cool.
Loved it.
I'm glad.
Did you make that?
No, I actually had somebody do it. This kid from Venezuela, he's real good. His name is Sken Galis.
Oh, shout out to Mr. Sken Galis.
So, okay, I used to be a television reporter, and every night it was homicides and it was like really bad stuff. And then I remember going home at night and having to watch something funny so that I could just, mellow out and stuff like that. First and foremost, you're a comedian and you're based in San Antonio. Tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to the world of comedy.
Do you remember Pollo Pollo?
Yes.
You know who that is? Okay, my parents used to listen to his tape in the car, and it was in Spanish. Don't get me wrong, but without getting into too deep of something harsh in my life or anything like that, my parents, they fought a lot when I was a kid, but the only time they were happy is when they put on that tape when we took the long road trips to Mexico. They would both be laughing, and I'd be like, that guy's making them happy. And that was like my first experience with what stand-up comedy is capable of. Mm-hmm. Comedy in general is capable of just kind of like mending things. As funny as it can be, because a comedian can like tear apart a relationship on stage if they want to.
You're right.
It was interesting to watch that it actually brought my parents together, considering I didn't, you know what I mean? Me being born wasn't enough, but it was just cool. So, and then now granted it was in Spanish and I was a kid. I only spoke Spanish with them. So being in school, only speaking English, it was still kind of like a little bit of like this kind of curve going upwards. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was like, he's talking pretty fast for me, but it's making them happy. And I started catching on. I started laughing with them. Don't ask me to ever do comedy in Spanish. Not yet, but I will get there. Yeah. But, and then I guess down the road, I started getting really into those, like the 30-minute comedy specials on Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Those were my after school specials. It would be Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, Comedy Central after, you know what I mean? Like that was the order of things that I would watch things. And then I would get to homework or video games. And I always just kind of love the fact that they're just up there and they're, whether it's their lives or their story, like they're up there and they're making people happy. Mm-hmm. And it looks easy, and then starting to do comedy and you're like, this isn't easy at all.
Were you the class clown?
Not at all, man. I was always either very quiet or I was kind of a bad student when it came to certain things, because I used to fall asleep in class a lot.
Oh yeah.
I was the impulsive one that would say something every now and then, and they weren't used to that, so I always got in trouble right away.
Oh wow, okay.
I remember making an inappropriate joke, and they gave me like a 30-minute talk, but I was like, this guy says it all the time. They don't say anything to him. But I was always very quiet, even today, like even before my last show that I had. I'm sitting there, in our area, and I'm just quiet. I'm just sitting there and I'm watching and I'm thinking. I don't say a word. I get up there, and I did really well this last show. And I normally don't brag, but dude, Anyways, it was cool to see like some people get that perspective. Like, okay, he just sat there quiet. He went up there and did his set, killed it, came, sat back down. He's quiet again.
How long have you
I
been
was
doing
all,
it?
I'm going on about 4.5 years, maybe 5. I know I started out in the December era,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I should count COVID, or being quarantined and locked up. I did a lot of like online comedy specials, but they were always kind of like game showy and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I didn't do what a good comedian should have done, which was like write material and prepare. I instead just watched a lot of Star Wars and played video games. And at the time, I was drinking like crazy. So I I would say that maybe I took a little break, a year break, or I don't remember how long that was. What was it, like 6 months for us?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I'm creeping in on that 4.5, maybe 5 year mark.
Okay. Like you, I was I'm still kind of I'm quiet, you know. When I go
Yeah.
out, I kind of observe,
Yeah.
people. I remember in high school, well, okay, going back to elementary school, there was a kid, his name was Eduardo. I can't remember his last name, but he told me because I was quiet. He goes, "Hey, if you want to make friends and whatnot, you have to put yourself out there and talk and participate in conversation and all that
Yeah.
stuff." And I said, "Okay." So I took that to heart. So I had an art class and I sat next to this like really funny kid. He was like the
Yeah.
troublemaker,
Hmm.
and he would make me laugh so much that the teacher kicked me out of class because I was laughing too hard. And so, yeah, that's the only time I remember like actually having a great time in school. So when I heard you're a comedian, I'm like, oh, I wonder if he was the class clown. So
No,
were you that guy or were you me? Quiet.
I was you. I always befriended the guy that was a troublemaker.
Yeah,
I always befriended the you shouldn't talk to him guy.
yeah.
I like, yeah, don't get near him. I was always friends with that person for a while, just because the same thing. I guess I needed to be entertained. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily me always doing the entertaining, but I needed my little brain needed to be happy at all times,
Yeah.
even if I wasn't doing it. And it was just you know if you hang out with that person today, is that the same person today? Your class clown?
Ooh, probably not. He's probably like a serious career type of person.
Oh yeah, no, not
Maybe.
my friend. No, no, he's I don't think he's done anything serious since then.
To be honest, okay.
No name. I'm not gonna give a name, but
So okay, so when you're on stage, is there a science behind telling a good story?
yeah, absolutely. And I'm not even gonna say I figured it all out,
Yeah.
but I do like to break it down. I do like to break certain things down, and I have actually looked into so many different things when it comes to just the writing itself and then the performing.
Mm.
So just with the writing alone, comedians will always say, "Oh man, I want to write about this, but I just don't know how to start it." And every time I hear something like that, I go, "There's got to be a solution." So I started looking into how do bloggers always have a topic of the day, and how do novelists always be able to go from one end to the other in their stories, and how do other writers do it? There is material out there that comedians do.
Mhm.
There's plenty of people that you can YouTube watch. There's books that are out there, and I recommend it. Do a class if you could find one. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you'll be able to break down comedy structure, because
Mhm.
there is a structure. You know what I mean? Like there is platform, there is a template, so to say, that you
Mhm.
could follow that'll help you come up and generate material.
Mhm.
But I started to do that recently, to where I'm doing like word of the day, headline of the week, and then like once a month, on the first Monday of every month, I have it on my calendar. I find 5 things about myself, and that's where I get to this next subject, where it's the performance part. I started looking at how people do like their TED talks and stuff like that. I know it's a way off type of thing, but it's public speaking,
Mhm.
and in a sense, when you're a comedian that nobody knows,
Mhm.
that's the thing about it, is that nobody knows who you are. So when you're trying to get out there and get people to get to know you, that's the topic. That's get them to get to know you. So your first thing is to make a connection with them and let them know that you're talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple jokes where I will make sure that it's me acknowledging the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'll say interesting things like, good, this is a good looking crowd. And then I'll say, I feel like that's kind of weird thing to say for an entertainer to do. You know what I mean? Like, this is a good looking crowd. To me, it sounds like, you guys are a good looking crowd. And it'll kind of get that, like, my acknowledgement to the crowd. From there, I do at least, a good 3/4 of the material about me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's punching down on myself, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to get just like a couple experiences about myself, and then towards that point, in that moment, then I could start sharing opinions, because you've gotten to get to know me, and my opinion actually has some sort of like influence on how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going up there going, so I was dating this week, you know what I mean? Like, don't I feel like getting to know you is the best way to reach that connection with your audience and get that laughter out there, because it's it's easier to get your to laugh with your friends than like some stranger going up to you and telling you jokes, which is what comedy is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're expecting this comedian to make you laugh, but there is a science to it, and it's get to know him. There is all kinds of stuff that they do in theater.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of like psychologically based to make the audience feel like they're a part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into a lot of that too. They actually, I got I got so interested in it that I was looking at how magicians trick the brain.
Okay.
Yeah. I look at all kinds of stuff like that. And so that, I mean, science behind comedy, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I always look for that, and I always look for new ways and different ways. I wouldn't say better, because I can't even tell which one's good. You know what I mean? 'Cause even then, with a good broken down science, I'll still have a bad set, and I'll be like, well, thanks for coming out to my TED Talk, guys. At least I practiced for that. You can follow me if you want to, either to my car or on Instagram.
I remember when they used to have us go out into the community and host like fundraisers or community, events. And I remember looking up, Googling like jokes that I could tell on stage. And sometimes they would be great and people would laugh. And I remember, oh my God, thank God they laughed,
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, I did a fundraiser and there was a bunch of like, I guess, high school kids in the back. And I remember, telling a joke or two and people would laugh. And then somebody out there was like, you suck. And I was like, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, and I'm going to keep going, But how do you handle hecklers out there?
I've had some different experiences. I've had one where I always punch up afterwards. So if somebody's kind of like, if they give me like that, you suck.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do right after that is kind of like, oh, dude, you have a nice voice. I always punch up afterwards, because so they're trying to insult me, or they'll kind of get like this aggressiveness towards me, and I'll just, I'll take a moment and pause, and I'll stare. And I have this thing about me where even if I'm smiling, like sometimes people can't tell, so it'll look like I'm angry, and I'll just kind of like give them a compliment. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, you're real tall when you stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll say something like that. Like I remember I said something, and I had a lady. She gave me the middle finger, and I was like, "Oh my God, your nails are so nice." And it just, I mean, it may not be the biggest laugh, but it's a recovery regardless.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I've had moments where some of them were like, "You're not funny," or "That joke isn't funny," and and sometimes I'll have to go the same amount of energy, but just bounce back. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they'll say, "You're not funny." Well, neither is anything that you'll say. So let's just keep going. But that all kind of depends. You know what I mean? After a while, you learn. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this is this type of crowd, and they like these types of jokes. I'm not gonna say speak for every comedian or anything like that, but what I like to do is I observe how, like, if I'm not on first, I observe okay, they like these types of jokes, and
Hmm.
I got stuff for that. And I'm always going to involve the crowd in my material.
Hmm.
So
So after a set, do you go back and kind of write down, okay, this joke worked, this didn't work, let's update this?
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I've heard this from a comedian friend of mine. She's killing it in the game right now. Her name is Irma Ruiz. One of the things that she told me that stuck with me was your best joke is always going to be one of your oldest jokes.
Hmm.
And the reason that is because I have like some of the jokes that I wrote like year 2 that I still use,
Hmm.
and I'm still tweaking it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm still working on that material to the point where like I it amazes me that it still grows. Like each one of these jokes, and if we're writing every day like that, it could sound overwhelming, but it's to that point where like, man, like it doesn't stop. Sometimes you shorten it. Sometimes you add a new tag. Somebody will say something one day, or like sometimes an audience member even has helped me with a tag once, or just like a random friend that hasn't been in comedy. You want that outsider perspective because that's who you're, giving the entertainment to. That's who you're making people laugh. Like,
Yeah.
and you should listen to that. Like, it's a business in a sense, and you always want to listen to your customers' needs, and it's
Hmm.
kind of the way to put it. You know what I mean?
In your opinion, how has comedy changed over the years?
Ooh, I think the overall outside in perspective has changed in a sense too, where we used to see comedians as like, man, this guy, he's doing it big and this and that. And I think now that I've kind of been in the local scenes and I've seen other local scenes, I always get this idea that like people don't want to go anymore. And I get it, you know what I mean? Sometimes they've either been to a bad show or they don't know who we are. So it's almost as if it's a little bit harder to get attention
Hmm.
and to prove to people that what we're doing, hey, it's good. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's one thing that's changed. And then the one subject that everybody would love to talk about is how the people getting offended by things. And that is something that happens, but I don't want to say it's unavoidable.
Hmm.
Even if you try to avoid it as much as you can,
Do
if you
you,
stay true to yourself,
yeah.
it's kind of hard to cross that path.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? If you're staying true to material about yourself, you're talking about yourself more. It does get a little harder to cross that like, oh, that's offensive type path.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my next question. Do you ever say something and think to yourself, "Oh, I think I crossed the line," or not
Um,
really?
I do have a couple jokes that what is it that I get told? I got told that I don't cross the line. I run up against it and stay there.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and I was like, all right. I mean, it has to be someone else that says it, anyways, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And ever since the whole slap incident at the Oscars, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Do you get scared at all, or about what you might
No,
say?
no. For one, don't respect the stage.
Right.
You know what I mean? And two, I took martial arts. You know what I mean? I got my third degree black belt in Taekwondo. You can go ahead and try and slap me. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. So,
Yeah.
so what does your comedy focus on? You said yourself. Is
You
it more
know,
like growing up or like present day?
it's a little bit of both. I like to. I have a couple stories where I'm comparing the two. I do some stories about my parents taking me to Mexico when I was a kid, and some of the experiences with that, and I talk about things I've learned, like things I've learned since then too. There's a couple stories that I'll share with just my like everyday to day experience, like kind of like, oh, this is how I wake up and how I'm feeling about myself, and let's just move on. One of the things that I've always enjoyed about what I've been doing with my material is that this is things that I used to be ashamed of. You know what I mean? Things that anybody could be ashamed of. That's what makes it relatable.
Hmm.
Such as like, a man and his body weight. Like men don't talk about their body weight outside of comedy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's usually something like, all right, you guys can tell I'm kind of tubby. You know what I mean? Like, and just right then and there, you're already like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
So, but I talk about like full body hair. You know what I mean? Like since middle school, I was already with shoulder hair. So you could like I grew up like I hate me for this. So when I started like, when I started working different jobs and stuff like that, getting better jobs, I was like, I'm gonna go get waxed. And I started like taking care of that all the time. And after a while, I was like, I don't care anymore. And I started to talk about it on stage, and people, it's the same thing. Like, oh, that's gross, but that's funny. You know what I mean?
Bah.
Because I'm not the only one, and it's interesting to see the different reactions in the crowd to something like that, because it's something that's still sprinkled around throughout humanity. Like, there's hairy men out there, and there's women out there that like it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So tell us what comedy has brought to your life.
Oh man. So that's a good question. I'll tell you that much. Comedy has brought more than just making that thing in my brain just wiggle around and make me feel like dopamine and feel happy. Comedy has kind of given me like this empowerment. You know what I mean? As far as me doing comedy, it's coming back to the whole talking about things that I'm ashamed of again. Where like I used to hate this about me, and now it's making people happy.
Mhm.
And I'm turning what used to be a negative for me into happiness. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's that same thing when I'm looking at what my parents were going through, and then they put in that crappy sounding tape of Polo Polo. You know what I mean? And you hear all the sound effects, and they're happy, and they're actually smiling together.
Mhm.
I've always liked that. And then one of my favorite things that I've always said about comedy is that it lives everywhere. Even you said you were doing a charity event, and I have something on that later on. You're doing a charity event, and even then, like comedy was involved there.
Mhm.
Comedy's in music. Comedy's in, you know what I mean. It's all over the internet. It's on TV. It's in
Mhm.
the radio. It's everywhere. You're laughing. It's the water cooler conversation even has
Yeah.
to be funny. And
Uh,
that's what I love about it.
what's a feeling like when you make someone laugh? I know that when I tell a joke or I'm at the bar, like I'm normally not the life of the party,
Yeah,
but I like to make people laugh and see a smile, and that makes
yeah.
me feel good. How about you?
That's the same. Yeah, absolutely. It's addictive.
Mhm.
It's definitely like a therapy. It's a form of therapy for I've heard other comics say the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially like say for example, you Google the joke, right? Like you Google the joke, and even then, like, oh good, they laughed. Can imagine the feeling when it's something that you came up with. You know what I mean? Like from beginning to end, from putting the paper, putting pen to paper or putting it in your phone as a note, and you talk about it because it was in your head. Like that's a good feeling right there.
Mhm.
And the downside of it is the higher you can go up, the harder you could fall. So like if you put in the work and then all of a sudden like it didn't go well, you want to scream into a pillow, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And then I go home and eat a lot of sugar.
Oh god, yeah. Gummy bears or what?
That's funny. Um, I do a joke. It's related to the body hair joke where I say I look like a gummy bear that you pick up from the carpet.
Nice.
Um, but oh man, my go-to sugar, it's always something liquid. It's always a beverage. I like it cold and Red Bull. You know what I mean? It's got to be filled with Red Bull sugar.
Oh yeah.
Or I do the paletas, the strawberry creamy ones. You know what I'm talking about.
I think so.
Yeah, you either get them from the gas station or you got to get them from the corner store in Mexico.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or from my best friend Anna's shop in Chicago.
There you
Shout out.
go. Shout out. Thank you,
Okay.
Anna.
So if somebody out there is listening and they want to pursue a career as a comedian, and I've seen those reality shows. I think it was called Last
Last
Comic
comic
Standing.
standing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does someone even start?
Well, every local comedy scene is going to have some sort of community already, especially now. It's so much easier because of the internet. I would suggest start first with two things. Look for your Facebook groups. You know what I mean? Just type in your city. So for me, San Antonio Comedy, we have a Facebook group where we have the schedule for all the open mics. So that way there's like one every, like there's almost one every week or every day of the week.
Mhm.
Friday and Saturday, Sunday. No, there's even one Sunday now. So even Friday and Saturday, those are show days, like strictly pretty much. It seems like it. They're open for an open mic, but that's what we have so far. Some days there's more than one, so you could do like a circuit. You know what I mean? and get involved. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not gonna go and try out comedy right away, then go watch. You know what I mean? Go see how it starts from the beginning. Go
Mm-hmm.
see how it goes from there. Don't put yourself in that Netflix special mindset already.
Yeah.
You have to remember that it's a process,
Yeah.
and it's gonna take a minute to get up there. You know what I mean? So, enjoy that process. Get to know the people, because when you do that, it gets more real, and you get to actually like hang out with a community of fellow like-minded people, and you make friends, and you're writing 4 minutes of material, and you're working on that. Next thing a few years down the line, you have 10 minutes, and then it becomes 15, and then it becomes 20, and then you're like, hey, we need you in this other city, and you know what I mean? It just keeps going and going and going.
Mm.
And just it's persistence, and have tough skin, for one. That's one thing. The other biggest piece of advice is learn the business side of it. Comedy is a business with the front of the house and the back of the house, just like anything else. And so that's going to involve, look into how business does their marketing. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be active on social media now. You know what I mean? If you're one of those people that are like, oh, well, I don't trust
I hate
Facebook.
social media.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, cool. Well, no one's going to ever learn who you are.
Right.
And even then, like, deep down inside, I have moments where I'm like, I feel silly making this post, or I feel silly making these reels.
Yeah.
But like, you'll find a way if you keep at it and you keep trying. You know what I mean? Just know that you got to have a presence there, and in that presence online, it's okay to be a little serious sometimes, or it's okay to not take yourself too serious either. You can go either way. And I learned everything I could to get myself out there. I started comedy with a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the podcast, I was like, well, I don't want to pay somebody to design a website. So I learned how to design a website.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pay somebody to learn how to do graphic design. So I learned how to do all that. Take the time to learn all that, man.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how it's been for me. If you have connections, and if you have people willing to help you, that's another thing too. You know what I mean? You'll make those connections. So online, there's your front of the house, and it's go there, be present, and don't be afraid to network. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And learn what it's going to be like, because there's going to be ups and downs in comedy. It's all made to make people laugh, but you'll still run into some speed bumps here and there.
Yeah.
And you're gonna bomb.
Yeah.
Every comedian bombs.
What or who? Before I ask you who your favorite comedian is, where can people find you and connect with you? And I know you have a lot of dates planned, right, in the San Antonio area.
I got quite a bit, yeah. So favorite comedians, I have a few. that I like my go-tos. So I always started out with saying George Carlin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And some people don't. Unpopular opinion. It's not all of George Carlin. I liked how he was doing, in the later years before he passed.
Yeah.
And it was that, that careless energy where he's just gonna say whatever he wants, and they're gonna love it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while to realize that he earned that. You know what I mean? He had the following for it. He had the time to build that up, and he's not doing those weird musical songs anymore that he used to
Yeah.
do, and those weird like fake radio baseball game things that he you know what I mean? Like, he's tried all kinds of things, and that's the thing. And then this will start getting obscure, but Wyatt Cenac I really like. I like comics for their cadence and the cleverness and stuff like that. I always look for really, really clever writing. Kyle Kinane is one of my favorites, because he's got this like, he's got this like doesn't really care to be up there energy, and it's so it's comforting to watch and listen to, because he kind of just reminds you of like that cool uncle that knows how to do everything in the woods.
Yeah.
And then where to find me? Well, let's see. If you're gonna look for me at all, I put my at Vic Mendoza. That's my tag on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm always posting shows and information about shows on there, and that's got the link to my website. You can always look at my calendar there. Coming up next, I'm at a place called Tank's Pizza. It's a pizza place, don't get me wrong, but this place sells out shows.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of people, yeah. and the performers that we get, the comics that we get they're top notch comics. So I'll be there on the 20th,
That's
8 o'clock. Yeah, and then from there I'll be in Corpus twice, actually, on the 22nd and then on the 25th.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
And I'll be posting all that stuff in the show notes so people know.
absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. My favorite comedian, I sometimes YouTube Don Rickles. Do you remember him?
Oh, the roasts.
Yes, he did
The
a roast
roast.
with
Yeah.
what was his name? Martin Scorsese, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And just the things that were coming out of his mouth, I was like, "What? He got away with that?" But back
The
in the day, it was
nerve, right?
different.
The nerve. Like I said, it's okay to still kind of go for that type of material. I do quite a bit of roast too.
Yeah.
So I also do private gigs and corporate gigs too, right? And the one of the things I get asked to do most often is, can you roast my boss? So I think the last time it was a tech company, right?
Yeah.
And the owner, he owns several businesses and he's got like a yacht club and all this stuff. And I was like, say no more.
I got this.
You already got it. You already got it. And I was like, I got 10 minutes on just that. And I'm like, what else? Okay, keep going. And then like, all right, stop, hold on. And it's fun. Birthdays, you know what I mean? When a comic wants to do a roast for their birthday, I've done quite a few of those too, and those are because there's that now that the public is involved now, not just like and it's funny because sometimes they don't even know who we are, and they're just insulting each other.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when people are drinking, it gets even.
Oh yeah, man. People love talking mess, man. People love it when others talk mess around each other. Like, when like a couple's fighting to the table next to you, you're like, it's one of those, I'm glad it's not me, but that's kind of funny situation.
Yeah. Hate to be them. No.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Vic. Thanks so much for joining me. Continued success, and God bless you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Carlos, man, I love this, by the way. Thank you for having me on.
And that's all the time we have. Thanks so much for watching and for listening to this episode of Carlos Tonight. It was written and produced by yours truly, Carlos Correa. My theme by Sken, Galis. Remember, you can check out my website at carlostonight.com. There you'll find more information on the podcast, the upcoming guests, and check out past episodes. That's carlostonight.com.